Hey there guys, how are you? So it's that time once again where I talk about my top 10 favorite movies of 2022, and I didn't forget. The reason I put these out in January is because it's the post-apocalyptic wasteland of cinema. It's the place where movies go to die. There's not much new coming out. There's not really much else to talk about, so I savor that top 10 flavor for the dead zone of the year known as January. And with all that said, let's talk about some movies. The Northmen, an epic time period film with an art house vibe. The film is based on a 13th century Norse tale. One thing I appreciate about director Robert Eggers is he will push the audience into uncomfortable situations. And I enjoy things like that. And at one point you see Willem Dafoe and a little boy farting together in a tent, screaming. But yeah, it was entertaining. It was nice to see Alexander Skarsgård go from Tarzan to the Northmen. By the way, really nice guy. I met him like 5 years ago. Super tall. Next up is The Menu, and this film was the biggest surprise for me this year. And I'll keep it real with you. Going into this film, based on the trailer, I wasn't all that enticed to see it. I thought it would be a clever film, but I was like, I'll watch it at home one day when I get around to it, but I'm glad I didn't wait. And you could tell throughout the film the screenwriters really had something to say about people who critique and review things for a living. And as a dude who talks about movies for a living, I guess I could have taken that as a jab, but I really enjoyed it. And not only is the film clever and quick-witted and well-written, it just goes for it. By the end of the film, they don't hold anything back. And I was like, yes, thank you. And by the way, in the movie The Menu, where they do in fact eat food throughout the entire film, I want to give a quick mention to the sponsor of this video, which relates to food. Did you like that clever, witty segue? Either way, here's the quick mention to the sponsor of this video. It's actually a really cool food company. I think you will dig it if you like to eat, like I do, most people do, and I'll be right back, so don't go anywhere. This is one tasty meal. I'm sorry to eat in front of you guys, but I just got these in. This is the honey mustard chicken from Factor, and you guys know I'm a dude. I don't like to cook, but I like good food, so let me tell you about Factor and how awesome it is as I continue eating this chicken. Hang on. It's a new year and you have goals, and Factor's here to help you achieve each and every single one of them. Save time and have the energy you need to tackle everything on your to-do list. With Factor's ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your door, that's no longer a problem. And if you're like me and you want to save time this new year and do the things that you want to do, get Factor. Not only can you skip the trip to the grocery store, but skip the chopping, prepping, and cleaning up too. And the best part is Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are ready in just 2 minutes. So all you have to do is heat and enjoy. No matter what your lifestyle, Factor has the meals to help you live to the fullest. With keto, calorie smart, vegan plus veggie, and protein plus meals on the menu each week. Prepared by chefs and approved by dietitians. Simply choose your meals and enjoy fresh, flavor-packed meals delivered to your door, ready to eat in just 2 minutes. One other thing I'd like to do in the new year is cut back on the takeout because I eat out a lot. It's very expensive and more times than not the food's not the greatest, and maybe you're looking to do the same. Get Factor instead. Not only is Factor cheaper than takeout, but meals are ready quicker than restaurant delivery in just 2 minutes. Get Factor and enjoy eating clean without the hassle. There really is no easier way to eat well. Head to factor75.com/flickpick60 and use code FlickPick60 to get 60% off your first Factor box. So this new year, save some time, save some money, and use promo code FlickPick60 to get 60% off your first Factor box. That's a pretty good deal. If you want good food, definitely use the link down below. Save some money. As always, guys, thanks for watching this. Now let's get back to the video. Spoilers, the next one up is The Black Phone. This was a simplistic yet thrilling horror film that kept me on the edge of my seat. It's about a creepy dude who kidnaps children and puts them down in his basement. It sort of reminds me of my Uncle Gary. It's okay, he's incarcerated, so you're safe to walk the streets at night, everyone. And another reason this film captivated me was it reminded me of one of my favorite thrillers of all time, and that's Silence of the Lambs. Now, Black Phone's nowhere near the severity of that film, or as graphic, or as violent, and there's much less cannibalism in Black Phone, but there's similar tones and themes. You have a creepy dude kidnapping people, putting them down in his basement. That's why I really enjoyed it. Nope. I wouldn't say this is my favorite Jordan Peele film, and I wouldn't even say it's objectively his best film, but I found it to be his most rewatchable. Since originally watching this in theaters, I've watched it a few times on 4K. I like looking at the film. I like the scenery and the settings and the color palette and the color grading. Either way, whenever you have a film about a group of people trying to capture UFO footage, I think that's an awesome concept and I want to watch that. And one other thing I enjoyed about Nope, beyond the really cool concept of trying to figure out the mystery in the sky, was the subplot revolving around the chimpanzee known as Gordy. And it was some of the most gruesome shit I've seen all year. Oh yeah, it's also very funny at times. Beyond the violent, bloody chimpanzee sequence. It's a really funny movie as well. Everything Everywhere All at Once. And I miss seeing this in theaters, and I'm almost sort of glad I did, because watching it at home, for me, was almost more immersive, because after the film was over, I was able to immediately go back and rewatch it and pick up on little details that I missed the first time around. I don't know if everyone would agree with this, but for me at times, this almost felt like the comedic version of The Matrix, except with hot dog fingers, which still haunt my dreams. And speaking of that, I love the absurdity throughout this film. From start to finish, there's a lot of absurd sequences, but they all have meaning, so they had a reason for existing. For example, there's one scene where you have a couple of rocks that are talking to each other. Just a couple rocks on the side of a cliff having a conversation. And when watching that, I thought to myself, this is brilliant. Please, Hollywood, give me more of this. It's definitely an innovative film, but at the core of it, it's about relationships. Avatar, why did this movie take 87 years to come out? But it finally did, so thank you, James Cameron. And we got to see Avatar 2 before we all died. Now, I already know what the comments are going to be. Well, the story sort of sucked and it was a lackluster, mediocre movie. Yeah, I mean, I can understand your viewpoints and I might even agree on some of them, but it was fun to go back to Pandora for 3 hours, and going back there, well, it made me wet. Because there's a lot of water. And by the way, I wish I could talk to a giant whale, and I also wish I was a 9-foot-tall blue alien. But in all seriousness, I actually enjoyed the character of Jake Sully more in this sequel, because this time around he's a father, and I liked that dynamic between him and his children, and I enjoyed how Neytiri and Jake Sully sort of take a back seat this time, and the kids are the forefront of the story. And very quickly, I feel like I have to explain myself before we move on, but the reason I gave this such a prominent place on my top 10 list is, when watching it up on the big screen, it did a few things for me. It sort of reminded me of what it was like to be a little kid going to the movie theater and watching larger-than-life blockbusters up on the big screen. Movies like Jurassic Park or Independence Day. Movies that offer pure escapism away from this cold, depressing thing that we call reality. And for me, Avatar: The Way of Water, it did that. So I think it was an effective film that did what it needed to do, and I really enjoyed it. So now we can go to the next movie. Next up, we just went from Avatar: The Way of Water, a bright, vivid, fun, action-packed film, to The Whale. And if anything ever described my personality, it's that exact stark contrast right there. Brendan Fraser was made for this role. I found this film so riveting, so moving, and it kept me on the edge of my seat the entire time. Now keep in mind, this film is about a morbidly obese man suffering from depression and a multitude of other things, and the film takes place entirely in one setting, which is his apartment. Now, a few things I want to say about the film The Whale is it's directed by Darren Aronofsky, who directed another one of my favorite films of all time, and that's The Wrestler. And I would say there's some overarching or similar themes to both films. You have a father and daughter distant relationship. The father has an addiction that's not quite healthy that could cost him his life. Another thing I really enjoy about films like this, and the reason I almost get so immersed into them, is they give you a glimpse into someone else's life. This could be a reality. Like, there's people that live a similar life to this every day. I guess I like to watch people. I like the human element, good or bad. I enjoy watching it. And before we move on, there's one sequence in this film I have to talk about, which I don't know if saying I enjoyed it is the right thing to say, but it evoked a lot of emotions out of me. And it's a scene where his character is binge eating. And you think, okay, he's eating a lot of food, but the way that it's portrayed and executed was more horrific than the most gruesome death scene. You know, you could take a shark eating some guy and his body splits in half and there's 18,000 gallons of blood. But this scene of his character just eating alone in his apartment was way more terrifying and unsettling than the most horrific death scene in any horror film I've seen. And for that, I think the movie will be ingrained in my memory. Hang on. I have one more late addition I want to add to this list, and this is a clear-cut example why I don't rush out my top 10s at the beginning of the year, because I want to wait and see every single movie before I make a conclusive top 10 list. And the next movie on my list is 13 Lives, directed by Ron Howard. I watched this film last night, and you can watch it right now on Amazon Prime. And this is the best Ron Howard film I've seen since probably Apollo 13, also another movie with the number 13 where a very tragic event happens that requires a rescue mission. For some odd reason, I didn't know that this movie came out, and I vaguely remember seeing a trailer for it 6 or 7 months ago, and I was talking to a friend, and he's like, hey, you should watch this movie. And I was like, okay, I'll watch this one last movie, then I'm going to edit my top 10 list and put it out today. And I'm recording this right before I put out the video. 13 Lives is a biographical film based on a true story where 13 boys get trapped in a cave system during a flood, and there's no way to evacuate them other than a rescue team of scuba divers going in for what almost seems like an impossible mission. It's claustrophobic, it's thrilling, and it's incredible, and it's one of those films where you find yourself holding your breath at times, and you're like, oh, okay, I can breathe now. And you get so thankful that you're not trapped in a cave with waters flooding up to your chin, and you're just sitting in your living room watching it in your underwear. And it was one of my favorite experiences of watching a movie at home, probably in a very long time. It has an incredible cast. The two main rescue divers are played by Viggo Mortensen and Colin Farrell, and they get lost in these roles. It felt like the real life versions of these characters brought to the big screen, and they're both very likable, but both very different at the same time, but they felt like real people. They felt like the people they were portraying, because after watching this movie, well, I got addicted to researching it, and it was fairly accurate. And I'm not going to spoil anything for you, but some of the methods that these scuba rescue divers utilize in an attempt to save these kids, it felt like the fiction of some screenwriter in Hollywood made this up just to make a more intense screenplay. But no, this all really happened. And when you watch it, you think to yourself, that is the most terrifying situation you could ever find yourself in if you were being rescued. Trust me, I can't recommend this movie enough. Go watch it right now on Amazon Prime. Thank me later. Top Gun Maverick. Isn't it crazy we go from Avatar to The Whale back to Top Gun Maverick? That's just my weird taste in movies. And this film made me feel the need for speed that I've never felt. I wasn't a huge fan of the original Top Gun, but I will say Top Gun Maverick is a superior film in every way. Now, I did see this film in IMAX, but watching it at home on 4K, I almost enjoyed the movie more the second time around. And you could ask my girlfriend this when we were watching it. There's a sequence in this film where Tom Cruise is proving that this mission that he set out to do can be accomplished. So he's just in this fighter pilot cockpit like this. For like 3 minutes. And after it was over, I whispered unintentionally, he's the fucking man. So is this film completely over the top at times and a tad cheesy? Absolutely, but some of the best 1980s films are, and since this is based on a movie from the 1980s, I'm glad they carried that same vibe into the sequel, and it was unapologetic, and I appreciated that. My number one movie of the year is The Batman. Listen, when it comes to this film, I have a 25-minute review right here on this channel where I talk about everything I loved and everything I didn't quite like, because it's not a perfect movie, and I'm very aware of that. My point is, I didn't go into this film with a blind love. I went into it with very high expectations, and the things that this film gets right, it met all of those expectations. I mean, sure, there's some subplots along the way and a few characters I can't stand, and rewatching the movie after 10 times throughout this last year, the sequence where the Riddler starts singing while in Arkham, it's like a rusty nail dragging across my brain, and I just have to skip that one scene. But the thing that Batman gets right is the tone. This is a very subdued detective film noir version of Batman, where it almost feels like a 1970s vigilante film that just happens to have the character of Batman in it. And that's what moved me so much with this. This is a version of Batman I've been waiting a very long time to see. And don't get me wrong, I'd like to see it go back to a more fantastical approach at some point, but I think a tone like this is a good palate cleanser before we do that again over at DC. A few things about this interpretation of Batman that I really appreciated was the atmospheric approach to Gotham City this time around. I think this was the best Gotham City we've ever gotten. It felt so lived in. It felt real and visceral. It felt dark and seedy and violent. It was awesome. And the technical aspects of this film, it was shot with digital cameras, but what they did is they took that digital file, put it on a film stock, and then scanned it, and it gave it that filmic look. You got the grain, it looked like a real film. It had a heartbeat and a pulse to it when you looked at it. And that's just little technical details I really appreciated. And plus some of the wide shots, yeah. Now, one last thing I want to mention about The Batman is, because it's my #1 movie of the year, so I feel like I really have to justify this, is rewatchability. When it comes to some of my favorite films of all time, they have to have high rewatchability. And I can safely say, since this movie has come out theatrically, I've watched it at least 10 to 12 times. And I still enjoy it. That wraps up my top 10 movies of the year. Look out for my next video where I talk about the top 10 worst movies of the year. I promise you that will be a good time. Don't miss it. Now here's my question for you, and let me know down below, what were your top 5 movies for 2022? Yeah, share that down below. As always, thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe. That way I can see you next time. And I'm gonna go eat some Chipotle. I'll see you guys later.